beaten, broken, and abandoned. Then a cowboy found her. Emily had always felt different from other children, even before the shadows of abuse started to cloud her life. She remembered a time when she would run barefoot through the small garden behind her house, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the soft grass under her feet. Those moments were rare, but they were the only glimpses of happiness she could recall. As she grew older, the laughter and sunshine slowly disappeared, replaced by fear, pain, and uncertainty. Her home, which should have been a place of safety, was anything but that. The walls that were meant to protect her held only echoes of anger and harsh words. The people who were supposed to care for her were cruel instead. They did not understand Emily. They never asked about her feelings or dreams. They only demanded obedience, and when she failed, the punishment was always severe. Emily learned early on that speaking up could bring more trouble than relief. Every time she tried to express herself, she was met with shouting or cold silence. It was as if her voice did not matter, as if she were invisible. This made her retreat deeper into herself. She began to hide her emotions, wearing a mask of calm and quiet, so no one would notice the sadness and fear that lived inside her. School offered little relief, though she was bright and curious. Her classmates noticed her differences and often teased her. They could sense the sadness she carried, even if they did not know its source. Sometimes children are cruel without realizing the full weight of their words, and Emily felt that cruelty sharply. She learned to sit quietly at the back of the class, avoiding attention and pretending that she belonged nowhere. Despite everything, Emily had a small spark inside her that refused to die. She loved to read, and books became her escape. When she opened a book, she could leave the harsh world behind and travel to places where kindness and magic existed. She imagined herself as the hero of her own story, brave and strong, even though the world outside seemed determined to make her weak.
In those pages, she could dream of a life where she was loved and valued. At home, the days were long and heavy.
Each morning, Emily woke with a knot of fear in her stomach. She never knew what mood would greet her, what anger or disappointment awaited her. The smallest mistake could trigger a storm. Sometimes it was verbal, harsh words that cut deeper than any physical pain. Other times it was a cold, hard shove, a reminder that she was powerless. Each incident chipped away at her confidence and hope. Emily often tried to run away in her mind. She would imagine a world where she was free, where she could walk safely at night without fear, where she could smile without hiding. But reality always pulled her back. She had nowhere to go, no one to turn to, and the world outside felt just as harsh as the one inside her home. Her dreams were fragile, and the world had a way of crushing fragile things. Loneliness became her constant companion. She had no friends who truly understood her. The few children who tried to be kind often gave up when they saw how harsh her life was. Adults, too, seemed blind to her suffering. Teachers noticed her quietness, but never dug deeper. Neighbors saw her but looked away. Emily felt invisible, like a ghost passing through life without anyone seeing her pain. Even in her darkest moments, however, Emily never stopped hoping. She held on to a small belief that life could be different, that someday she might meet someone who would care, someone who would see her not as broken, but as a person worthy of love. This hope was like a tiny candle flickering in the wind, fragile, but persistent. It was this hope that kept her moving forward, even when every step was painful. As she grew older, the abuse became harder to bear. Physical pain left bruises that faded in time, but the emotional scars ran deeper. She began to withdraw even more, keeping to herself, avoiding eye contact, and speaking only when necessary. Her silence was both a shield and a prison. She wanted to scream, to tell the world what was happening. But she feared the consequences. Fear had become a constant, unwelcome companion, shaping her every action.
Yet even in these painful moments, Emily discovered small strengths within herself.
She learned to survive, to navigate the treacherous world around her. She learned to read people's moods, to predict anger, and to avoid conflict when possible. Survival required intelligence, patience, and courage. And Emily had all of these in quiet abundance. The strength she developed in hardship would later become the foundation for her recovery, though she did not know it at the time. Sometimes she found solace in the simplest things: a quiet walk under the stars, the sound of rain tapping on the roof, or the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind brought her fleeting peace. These small moments reminded her that beauty still existed in the world, even if she could not reach it fully yet. She clung to these moments like a lifeline, drawing from them the tiny pieces of hope she still possessed. Emily's dreams often felt like fragile wings, delicate and easily broken. She dreamed of leaving the town, of starting anew far from the pain and fear she had known. She imagined a life filled with safety, laughter, and love, a life where she could be herself without hiding. But each day, reality reminded her that dreams alone could not protect her. But life was hard, and she was alone.
Despite this, her spirit remained unbroken.
Deep down, Emily believed that kindness existed somewhere in the world, even if she had not experienced it firsthand. She believed that one day someone would reach out to her, not to control or hurt her, but to help and support her. That belief, small as it was, became her guiding light, the one thing she held on to in the darkest nights.
And so, Emily continued to move forward, step by step, day by day.
Drowned in despair, she endured the harshness of her home, the cruelty of others, and the loneliness that weighed on her heart. She endured not because she had to, but because a tiny part of her refused to give up. That part of her believed that life could be better, that she could be loved and valued. That belief, fragile and flickering, was her most powerful weapon against despair. Even when Emily felt the heaviest burden pressing down on her shoulders, she did not give up entirely. She held on to her dreams, her books, and the hope that someday, somehow, her life would change. But she did not yet know how. And she did not yet know who would come into her life. But she knew that the world had more to offer than the pain she had endured. Desks in those lonely, painful days, Emily learned a valuable lesson. Even when life is cruel and unfair, the human spirit can endure. Strength is not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it is quiet, persistent, and patient. Emily's strength lay not in her ability to fight back against her abusers, but in her ability to survive, to hope, and to dream even when everything seemed lost. Though her heart was heavy and her spirit wounded, Emily's journey had only just begun. The road ahead was uncertain and likely difficult, but she carried within her a spark that could not be extinguished. That spark would one day guide her to safety, to love, and to a life she had only dared to imagine in her most secret dreams.
After years of abuse and neglect, Emily's life had reached a breaking point.
Breath. One cold evening after another harsh encounter at home, she found herself completely alone. The house that should have been her refuge was now a place she dreaded. Doors slammed with anger, voices shouted with blame, and the air itself seemed heavy with tension. She had no one to turn to, no one to comfort her, and no one to even notice the tears that ran silently down her cheeks. With nowhere to stay, Emily stepped into the night. The streets were empty, dark, and quiet, yet they felt more welcoming than the walls she had just escaped. Each step she took was careful, measured, as if the shadows around her might reach out and pull her back into the pain she was trying to escape. The cold bit at her skin, but the chill seemed almost gentler than the world she had left behind. As she wandered, Emily thought about her past. Memories she had tried to bury resurfaced, uninvited and sharp. breaths. She remembered moments of cruelty, days when she felt unwanted, and nights when fear kept her awake. She remembered the words spoken to her, words that cut deep and lingered in her mind, reminding her that she was powerless. The weight of her history pressed on her shoulders, making each step forward heavy and painful. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, but food was not easily found. She scavenged for scraps where she could, ducking into alleys and behind buildings to avoid being seen. Each night felt endless, and Emily began to lose track of time. The world seemed vast, indifferent, and unkind. She began to feel like she might disappear entirely, unnoticed and forgotten, like a leaf blown away in the wind.
Sleep brought little comfort. When she finally found a corner to rest, the memories haunted her dreams.
Both cruel and unkind appeared in shadowy forms, taunting her and reminding her of everything she had endured.
Even when she closed her eyes, the world did not let her rest.
Pain and fear had become companions she could not escape. Yet, despite all of this, Emily's heart clung to a fragile hope. Great. She reminded herself of the small joys she had once known. The warmth of the sun, the laughter of a friend, the smell of fresh bread in the morning. Though these moments were rare, they were real, and she held on to them like precious treasures. They reminded her that life could be more than pain and fear, even if that life seemed unreachable now. Days turned into nights, and nights turned into a cycle of struggle and survival. Emily wandered through abandoned streets, parks, and empty fields, always looking for a safe place to rest. She avoided people when she could, not out of fear of kindness, but out of fear that trust could lead to more hurt. Each encounter with another human being was a delicate balance. One wrong word or look could trigger panic, and Emily had learned to protect herself in any way possible. She encountered strangers along the way, some kind, some indifferent. A woman at a small shop once offered her a sandwich and a smile, but Emily was too wary to accept it. She smiled back, a small, hesitant curve of her lips, but she did not take the food. Trust was not something easily given after years of betrayal. Even when someone extended kindness, she felt the heavy weight of suspicion pressing on her chest. In those quiet, lonely hours, Emily thought about her dreams. She imagined a life where she was safe, loved, and free from fear. She imagined waking up without the knot of anxiety in her stomach, walking through the world with confidence, and laughing freely without hiding. These dreams were fragile, but they were alive, glowing faintly in the darkness of her life. Each dream was a tiny act of rebellion against the world that had tried to crush her. Emily also discovered resilience she did not know she had. She learned to move silently through streets, to find water, to keep herself warm, and to protect herself from danger. Survival required constant vigilance, but it also gave her a sense of strength. She realized that even though the world had been cruel, she could endure it. Her endurance was not a boastful strength, but a quiet, stubborn refusal to let life defeat her completely. Despite all of her struggles, Emily sometimes allowed herself moments of reflection. She would sit beneath a tree in a quiet park, feeling the breeze on her face, listening to the rustle of leaves and letting herself breathe. In those moments, she imagined a future beyond the darkness, where she could find safety and perhaps even happiness. The world seemed possible in those moments, even if only for a short time. Break. One particularly cold night, Emily found herself near the outskirts of a small town. Lights glimmered in the distance, offering a faint warmth and a promise of life. She hesitated, unsure if she could trust the world she had been kept away from for so long. But hunger, cold, and exhaustion pushed her forward, her head. Step by step, she moved toward the lights, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. She thought about the life she had lost and the life she might still find. Every step felt heavy, yet with each step she carried a growing determination. Emily realized that she could not stay in the shadows forever.
She needed to find a way to survive, to find safety, and to reclaim some part of herself. The world was uncertain, but she had survived this long, and that alone gave her hope. As the night deepened, Emily found a quiet corner near a small closed shop where she could rest. She curled up under her thin jacket, shivering, but grateful for even a small measure of protection. The stars above twinkled faintly, as if offering a silent promise that the world still had beauty to offer. She allowed herself to close her eyes, knowing that tomorrow would be another test of endurance, but also another chance to move closer to the life she longed for.
Through all her hardships, Emily began to notice small lessons in her struggle.
Prescience, endurance, and the importance of small acts of courage. Each day she survived, she grew stronger, not in the way people often imagine strength, but in the quiet resilience that comes from facing life's harshest trials. She learned that even broken hearts could find ways to endure, and even the most lonely souls could find glimmers of hope. Emily also realized the power of observation.
She studied people from a distance, noting their behavior, their kindness, or their indifference. She learned to identify safe spaces, quiet paths, and kind gestures.
The world, though harsh, had patterns and rules, and understanding them gave her a sense of control. Even though she was small and vulnerable, her mind became her shield, helping her navigate the dangers that surrounded her. Sometimes she felt the weight of despair pressing down so heavily that even hope seemed impossible. She wondered if she would ever find a life free of fear, free of pain. But even in those moments, a tiny voice inside her reminded her to keep going. "You are still here," it whispered. "Perhaps there is more waiting for you." That whisper became her mantra, a quiet force that kept her moving forward. Emily's nights on the streets were lonely, cold, and sometimes terrifying. She experienced fear that clawed at her mind, but she also discovered moments of unexpected beauty. The moonlight reflecting on puddles, the gentle hum of distant cars, or the chirping of crickets in an empty field reminded her that life still had wonders to offer. These small glimpses of beauty became her companions, comforting her in ways she could not fully explain. By the time dawn broke, Emily had survived another night. Each sunrise brought a mix of hope and dread. Hope that perhaps today would be different, and dread that the world might still be cruel. Yet she continued to walk, to move forward, to search for something better. Her body was tired, her mind weary, but her spirit, fragile as it was, continued to resist complete surrender. And so, Emily's life continued in this quiet, painful rhythm. She wandered. She endured. She hoped. She was alone, but not entirely without courage. Though the world had abandoned her, she had not abandoned herself. Her journey was far from over, and even in the darkest nights, she carried a flicker of light, a promise that something better might lie ahead. Emily had reached a place where survival was no longer just about avoiding pain. It was about finding a reason to keep going, a reason to believe that life could offer more than suffering. Little did she know that reason was closer than she could imagine, waiting just over the horizon, in the form of someone who would see her not as broken, but as worthy of love and care. Emily had been wandering the outskirts of the small town for hours. Her legs ached, her stomach growled, and the cold pressed against her like an unwelcome weight. She had walked past empty fields, old barns, and silent roads, each step taking her further from the darkness of her past and closer to an uncertain future. Her mind was full of fear and caution, but beneath that, a small ember of hope flickered. Maybe, just maybe, someone would show her kindness. The night was quiet except for the distant sound of hooves striking the earth. Emily froze, listening carefully. The sound grew closer, steady and deliberate. Her first instinct was to hide, to move into the shadows, but something in the rhythm of the hooves felt different. It was calm, not threatening. Slowly, she peeked from behind a wooden fence and saw him, a tall man riding a horse, silhouetted against the moonlight. He was a cowboy, dressed in a worn hat and jacket, and there was a kind steadiness in his movements. Emily watched him from a distance, unsure if she should approach or stay hidden. Trust had never been easy for her, and after all she had been through, she knew that appearances could be deceiving. Still, something about the way he moved, the quiet confidence in his eyes, made her heart beat faster. She didn't understand it, but she felt a strange sense of safety. The cowboy noticed her almost immediately. He pulled his horse to a gentle stop and looked toward the shadows where she crouched. "Hey there," he called softly, not raising his voice, just enough for her to hear. "Are you all right?" Emily hesitated. Her first instinct was to flee, to vanish into the night, but her body refused to move. The weariness of the day, the endless night spent alone, weighed on her so heavily that even fear could not push her away. She stayed still, and the cowboy took a cautious step closer, keeping his distance, letting her see that he meant no harm. "My name's Jake," he said, his voice calm and steady. "Pray, you don't look like you've had an easy time."
Do you need some help? Emily's eyes welled up with tears.
No one had ever asked her if she needed help. Not really. People demanded things from her, punished her, or ignored her, but never once had someone approached her with genuine concern. She wanted to run, to hide, but the kindness in his tone stopped her. She took a small step forward, uncertain, and he smiled gently, nodding, giving her permission to trust him a little. Jake dismounted from his horse and leaned it against the fence, patting it lightly. "You look tired," he said. "I can give you a warm drink and some food, just for tonight." No questions, no pressure. Emily felt a lump in her throat. The offer was simple, yet it felt impossible. How could someone be this kind, just like that? She had spent years learning that kindness often came with strings attached, and the world had taught her to fear generosity. But this time, she didn't run. She nodded slowly, taking a tentative step toward him. Jake led her to a small, cozy cabin on the edge of the town. It was humble, but warm and inviting. A fire crackled in the hearth, sending soft golden light across the room. Emily's breath caught in her throat. For the first time in as long as she could remember, she felt safe. The walls did not echo with anger. The air did not press down with fear. Here, she could breathe freely. Jake prepared a simple meal while she sat quietly, unsure what to do with her hands. He didn't ask intrusive questions or press her to speak. Instead, he moved with quiet purpose, showing her that she was not in danger, that she could relax. Emily watched him, noticing the calm strength in his demeanor. There was a gentleness in his actions that seemed almost foreign to her, but it was comforting. As they ate together, Emily found herself speaking in small, hesitant sentences. She told him about her journey that night, the fear she had felt, and the loneliness that had followed her for years. Jake listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. His presence was steady, like the ground beneath her feet, something reliable in a world that had always been unpredictable. After the meal, Jake offered her a place to sleep. "You don't have to go back out there tonight," he said softly. "Rare. You can rest here. No one will bother you." Emily's heart swelled with gratitude, but also with a lingering doubt. Could it really be that simple? Could someone care without expecting anything in return? She nodded, unable to find words, and followed him to a small room with a soft bed. As Emily lay under the warm blankets, she reflected on the events of the day. She had walked through darkness, loneliness, and fear, yet somehow
She had found a person who treated her with kindness. It felt unreal, almost dreamlike, but she clung to it because she needed it. She closed her eyes, letting herself drift into a peaceful sleep for the first time in what felt like forever. The next morning, Emily awoke to the smell of fresh bread and coffee. Jake was already up, tending to the small chores of the cabin. He greeted her with a smile, and she realized that nothing had changed overnight. The world was still harsh, but here, in this small corner, there was warmth and safety.
Over the following days, Emily began to trust Jake a little more.
He did not push her to share her past or reveal her fears. He simply offered companionship and support. She learned small lessons from him: how to prepare simple meals, care for the horse, and tend to the cabin. These were not grand lessons, but each one gave her a sense of purpose, a feeling that she could do something right and be appreciated for it.
Emily's trust grew slowly.
Some days she would retreat into silence, afraid to show too much, afraid that if she let someone in, she might be hurt again. But Jake never wavered. He never demanded, never scolded, never forced her to speak. He simply existed as a steady presence, showing her that not everyone in the world was cruel. His patience taught her that kindness could be consistent, and that safety was not a fleeting thing. It could be real. One afternoon, they took the horse out to a nearby field. Emily had never ridden a horse before, but Jake guided her patiently, helping her climb into the saddle and holding the reins until she felt comfortable.
As they rode together through the open field, the wind in her hair and the sun on her face, Emily felt a sense of freedom she had never known.
For the first time, she felt alive, not just surviving.
It was during these small moments that Emily began to imagine a future beyond fear and loneliness.
She began to dream of a life where she could feel safe, loved, and valued. She realized that kindness could exist, that there were people who genuinely cared, and that she was worthy of love. These realizations, small as they were, planted seeds of hope in her heart. Jake became more than just a helper. He became a symbol of what life could be like when trust was met with care. Emily did not yet understand the full journey ahead, but she knew that she could rely on him. He had shown her that even after years of pain, a single person's kindness could spark a change powerful enough to alter the course of her life. As days turned into weeks, Emily's confidence grew. She learned to smile without fear, to speak without trembling, and to look at the world with cautious hope. The wounds of her past were still there, but they no longer defined her every moment. With Jake's support, she began to reclaim pieces of herself that she had long thought lost. The story of Emily and the cowboy is a reminder that help can come in unexpected forms, that one act of genuine kindness can be life-changing, and that even the most broken hearts can begin to heal when met with patience, care, and understanding. For Emily, Jake was not just a savior in the moment. He became the bridge to a life she had once only dreamed of, the first step towards safety, hope, and love.
And so the lonely girl who had wandered the streets afraid and exhausted began to experience life.
She had found someone who saw her not as broken or weak, but as human, worthy of care and respect. In Jake, she found the first glimmer of a future that promised more than survival. It promised healing, trust, and perhaps one day happiness. Emily had spent countless nights fearing the world, feeling invisible and broken. But her life was beginning to change. The days she had endured alone on the streets now seemed like a distant memory, replaced by moments of warmth, safety, and quiet hope. Living with Jake was different from anything she had ever experienced. He did not demand perfection, he did not scold, and he did not expect anything from her that she was not ready to give. But for the first time, Emily felt a sense of stability in her life, and it changed everything. Each morning began with small routines that gradually grounded her. She would help Jake feed the horse and sweep the cabin, learning the simple joys of caring for something and being cared for in return. These tasks may have seemed ordinary, but for Emily, they were transformative. She realized that she could contribute, that her actions mattered, and that she had value beyond her past pain. Slowly, her confidence grew, though she did not yet realize how much she was changing. Jake never forced her to speak about her past, but when Emily chose to share, he listened. He never interrupted, never judged, and never offered empty sympathy. Instead, he offered understanding and patience. Emily remembered long nights when she had cried in silence, when no one cared about her fears or her feelings. Now her tears were met with gentle words and quiet reassurance, and she felt the strange and wonderful experience of being truly heard.
Over time, Emily began to explore parts of herself that had been buried under years of abuse and neglect.
She remembered her love for reading and writing, which had once brought her joy in dark times. Jake encouraged her to pursue these interests again. He would sit nearby as she wrote in her journal, giving her the space to reflect and dream. Words became a refuge, a way to express emotions she had once thought too dangerous to reveal. Writing allowed Emily to process her past and imagine a future she had once believed impossible. Emily also began to interact with the small town nearby, Grace. Though she was cautious at first, she realized that the world was not entirely cruel. She found people who were kind, gentle, and patient. Some offered small jobs, like helping at a local bakery or tending to gardens, while others offered smiles and conversation. These experiences, though simple, helped Emily rebuild her trust in humanity. She learned that not everyone would hurt her, and that kindness could be consistent, not fleeting. One of the most significant moments in Emily's healing was learning to take care of herself physically and emotionally. Jake taught her how to prepare nourishing meals, keep her body warm and healthy, and rest properly.
These basic lessons were revolutionary for Emily.
For so long, survival had been about avoiding pain, but now survival included nurturing herself, reclaiming her strength and recognizing her own worth. She began to understand that she deserved care and attention, that she was worthy of comfort and protection. As Emily regained strength, she also discovered a sense of independence she had never known. She began walking into town alone, carrying herself with a cautious confidence. She learned to make decisions, to speak her mind, and to assert herself when necessary. These small victories built on each other, creating a foundation of self-reliance and resilience. For the first time, Emily realized that her past did not define her. She had the power to shape her own life. Healing was not linear, and there were difficult days. Memories of abuse would sometimes resurface, triggered by small events, a loud voice, a harsh glance, or a sudden loud noise. On these days, Emily would feel fear and sadness wash over her, as if the past were reclaiming her. But now, she had tools to cope.
She could write, take long walks, talk to Jake, or simply breathe and remind herself that she was safe. Each difficult day became an opportunity to strengthen her resilience rather than a reason to give up.
Emily also discovered the power of hope and dreams once again. She began imagining a life where she could pursue passions, travel, and perhaps even help others who had suffered as she had. The thought of a future beyond fear became increasingly real. Hope no longer felt like a fragile flame. It became a steady light guiding her toward new possibilities. With each passing day, Emily felt less like a victim of her past and more like a person reclaiming her life. Jake's unwavering support played a critical role in this transformation. He never demanded anything from her and never rushed her healing. Instead, he provided a stable, caring presence, a reminder that life could be safe and nurturing. Through his actions, Emily learned that love and care were not threats or traps, but gifts to be embraced. This lesson was profound. After years of being mistreated, Emily began to understand that being cared for and trusting others was not weakness. It was part of being human. One day, Emily helped Jake in the fields, tending to the animals in the land. As they worked side by side, she realized how much she had grown. The girl who had wandered alone in the dark streets was now strong enough to face challenges, care for others, and participate fully in life. This realization filled her with quiet pride. She had survived the worst and was now learning to thrive. Social interactions became less intimidating over time. Emily started forming small friendships with people in town, carefully testing the waters and learning to trust again. Grasp. She discovered that friendship could be safe, nurturing, and fulfilling. Each positive interaction reinforced her growing sense of belonging. She began to feel part of a community, no longer entirely alone in the world. Emily also reflected on the importance of forgiveness, not for those who had hurt her, but for herself. She realized that she had carried guilt and shame that did not belong to her. Letting go of those feelings was crucial for her healing. Slowly, she forgave herself for surviving, for living, for needing care and safety. She understood that her past did not make her weak. It had shaped her into someone resilient, compassionate, and capable of great strength and desperate. As time passed, Emily's perspective on life changed profoundly. She had experienced the harshest darkness, but she had also encountered genuine kindness, safety, and love. She realized that life was not simply about surviving, but about growing, learning, and embracing opportunities for joy and connection. Each day brought small victories, a laugh shared with a friend, a successful task completed, or a quiet moment of reflection by the fire. Emily began to dream bigger than ever before. She imagined a future filled with purpose, creativity, and connection. Ransta pictured herself helping others who had suffered, using her experiences to bring comfort and understanding to those in need. Her past, once a source of pain and shame, became a source of strength and empathy. She understood that she could transform her suffering into something meaningful, not just for herself, but for others. Through all of this, Emily learned that healing required patience, persistence, and self-compassion. There were no shortcuts, no instant fixes, but the small, steady steps she took each day brought her closer to the life she had once only dreamed of. Her resilience, courage, and growing confidence were proof that even the most broken hearts could rebuild themselves with time, care, and love. Emily's journey of healing and rebuilding was not only about survival, but about transformation. She had become a person capable of trust, hope, and joy. The once lonely, broken girl was now a young woman with strength, purpose, and the courage to face the future. She had discovered that life could be gentle, supportive, and filled with opportunities even after the harshest hardships. The bond she shared with Jake remained central to her transformation. He was not just a protector but a mentor, a companion, and a living example of kindness and patience. Through his guidance and unwavering support, Emily learned the value of human connection and the power of nurturing relationships. She discovered that love could heal, inspire, and empower, giving her the tools to move forward with courage and optimism. By the end of this chapter in her life, Emily was no longer defined by her past. She had rebuilt her sense of self, her confidence, and her trust in the world. She had learned that life could offer beauty, love, and meaning, even after profound suffering. And as she looked toward the future, Emily carried with her a deep understanding that resilience, hope, and kindness could overcome even the darkest experiences. Emily's story of healing and rebuilding reminds us that transformation is possible, that recovery is a journey, and that love, patience, and support can guide someone from darkness into light. She had found her strength, reclaimed her life, and discovered that the world could be a place of hope, joy, and belonging. And while challenges would still come, Emily now faced them with courage, confidence, and a heart ready to embrace life fully. Emily had come a long way from the frightened, lonely girl who had wandered the streets alone. The pain of her past, while never fully forgotten, had become a part of her story rather than the definition of her life. With Jake's unwavering support and the kindness she had found in the world, she had learned to trust, to heal, and to dream once again. The days grew brighter as Emily settled into a rhythm of life that was stable, comforting, and filled with purpose. She continued to help Jake with his daily tasks, caring for the horse and maintaining the small cabin. Each task was simple, yet it brought her a sense of pride. She realized that life could be built slowly, one small victory at a time.
Every day she accomplished something, preparing a meal, fixing a fence, or even tending to the garden, and each success reminded her that she was capable, strong, and deserving of care. Emily also began to immerse herself in the town's small community.
At first, she had been cautious, unsure if people could be trusted. But as she interacted with neighbors, shopkeepers, and even children playing in the fields, she discovered a world that was gentle, kind, and welcoming. People smiled at her, asked about her day, and offered help without expecting anything in return. Slowly, Emily realized that she belonged somewhere, that her presence mattered, and her life had meaning beyond survival. One of the most transformative experiences for Emily was reconnecting with her creativity. She had always loved reading and writing, but now she could do so freely, without fear or interruption. She filled notebooks with stories, thoughts, and dreams. Writing became a form of therapy, a way to process her emotions and envision a future where she was free from fear. Each page she filled with words brought clarity and empowerment. Through writing, she could take control of her narrative, shaping her life not as a victim, but as a survivor and a dreamer.
Emily also discovered the joy of helping others. She began volunteering at the local community center, assisting children and people in need. At first, she was nervous, unsure if she could offer value or if her past experiences made her unfit to help. But she soon realized that her experiences gave her unique insight and compassion.
Children who were scared, lonely, or struggling found comfort in Emily's presence. She could empathize in a way that was genuine, patient, and understanding. Each smile she received, each small word of gratitude reinforced her sense of purpose and belonging. Her relationship with Jake had grown into something meaningful, though it was not defined by grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was built on trust, respect, and quiet support. Jake never pressured her, never demanded her affection or approval. Instead, he allowed their bond to grow naturally. Emily learned the value of patience in relationships, understanding that trust and love could develop slowly and steadily. She cherished the stability he brought into her life and the example he set as someone who acted with kindness and integrity every day. As Emily's confidence grew, she began to imagine a future that extended far beyond the small town. She thought about traveling, meeting new people, and pursuing her dreams. For the first time in years, her life felt like a canvas waiting to be painted. She realized that she could make choices for herself, shape her own destiny, and create a life filled with joy, connection, and purpose. The dreams that had once seemed impossible now felt achievable. Emily also learned to forgive, not the people who had hurt her, for she knew some actions could never be excused, but herself. She forgave herself for the years she had spent in fear, for the silence she had endured, and for the mistakes she had made while surviving. This act of self-forgiveness was liberating. It allowed her to let go of the heavy burden of guilt and shame that had weighed on her for so long. She could now embrace her life fully, knowing that her past did not determine her worth or her potential. One quiet evening, Emily sat by the fire in the cabin, reflecting on her journey. The moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room with a gentle glow. She thought about the girl she had once been, frightened, broken, and abandoned, and she felt a deep sense of pride. She had survived unimaginable hardships, yet she had emerged stronger, wiser, and filled with hope. She realized that her struggles had shaped her into someone capable of empathy, resilience, and courage. The small town she now called home had become a place of safety and belonging. People greeted her warmly, offered help, and included her in their lives. Emily began forming close friendships, sharing experiences and building connections she had never thought possible. For the first time, she felt that she had a community, a network of people who valued her and welcomed her presence. This sense of belonging became one of the greatest gifts of her new life. Emily's days were no longer defined by fear or survival. She pursued her passions, nurtured relationships, and explored the world around her. She spent mornings writing, afternoons helping others, and evenings walking in the fields or sitting by the fire. Each day was filled with small joys, moments of reflection, and opportunities to grow. Life, she realized, was no longer something to endure. It was something to embrace. One of the most profound moments for Emily came when she helped a young girl in the town who reminded her of herself at a younger age. The girl was shy, withdrawn, and fearful of the world. Emily approached her with patience, understanding, and kindness, guiding her gently and encouraging her to trust. Seeing the girl slowly open up, smile, and find confidence was a powerful reminder to Emily of how far she had come. Her past pain had given her the ability to help others, turning her suffering into a source of strength and inspiration.
Emily also began to understand the importance of balance in life.
She learned that it was okay to ask for help, to rest, and to enjoy small pleasures without guilt. She celebrated accomplishments no matter how minor they seemed, and acknowledged her growth each day. This awareness allowed her to maintain her mental and emotional health, ensuring that her healing continued steadily and sustainably.
As the years passed, Emily's life became a testament to resilience, hope, and transformation.
She no longer feared the world or doubted her worth. She had discovered that the human spirit could endure immense suffering and emerge stronger, wiser, and capable of profound love and kindness. Her past, while a part of her story, no longer defined her identity. She was Emily, not the girl who had been beaten, broken, and abandoned, but the woman who had survived, healed, and embraced life fully.
Emily's story also highlighted the power of connection. The kindness of one person, Jake, had sparked the beginning of her transformation.
From there, she built a life filled with meaningful relationships, community, and purpose. She learned that trust, patience, and consistent care could heal even the deepest wounds. Emily's life became a reflection of hope, showing that even in the darkest circumstances, a new beginning was possible. The final lesson Emily embraced was that of courage. It took courage to leave the streets behind, courage to trust Jake, and courage to rebuild her life from the ground up. Each decision she made, each risk she took to open her heart and pursue her dreams required bravery. Emily discovered that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it.
This courage allowed her to transform her life and to embrace a future filled with possibility.
By the time Emily looked back on her journey, she no longer saw herself as a victim. She saw herself as a survivor, a dreamer, and someone capable of shaping her own destiny. She had reclaimed her life, her confidence, and her sense of worth. She had discovered that life could offer beauty, kindness, and joy, even after the most profound hardships. Her journey, once defined by pain and fear, had become a story of hope, resilience, and triumph. Emily's new beginning was not marked by grand celebrations or dramatic events, but by the quiet, steady unfolding of a life lived fully. Each day brought small victories, moments of connection, and opportunities for growth. She embraced these experiences, allowing herself to feel joy, love, and fulfillment. The world, once a place of fear and despair, had become a place of possibility and hope. In the end, Emily's story became a source of inspiration, not just for herself, but for others who had faced hardship. She showed that, even in the darkest circumstances, healing, growth, and a new beginning were possible. She proved that trust, patience, and kindness could transform lives and that even the most broken hearts could find hope and happiness again. Emily had truly come full circle. From a girl who had been beaten, broken, and abandoned, she had grown into a woman who was resilient, compassionate, and full of life. Her journey reminded everyone that the human spirit is capable of incredible strength, and that with support, patience, and determination, even the most difficult pasts could lead to bright, hopeful futures.